Hello everyone. Today we're gonna talk about your reading. A costume player, okay? Play at any cost. Can see it costs money, time, and energy, but that is really interesting and ludic, kind of communal, kind of experiences. You can share your time by playing games with your friends or boyfriend, girlfriends, and many of you on your essay you have mentioned you're playing League of Legends, and that is became a popular culture. And that is not just a subculture that was considered like 10 years ago, but now gaming is very popular kind of culture, just as Jesse's friend Maddie has mentioned that his favorite things while doing on weekends and during the free time is playing the League of Legends or playing the violin or learning new languages. So that is one category of your hobbies, very popular hobbies. And the Jenny has also mentioned I like swimming, surfing, skiing, and playing League of Legends. So that is that kind of popular kind of culture. Many of you have mentioned League of Legends, so I did some research. What is that? Okay, so for today, we're gonna pretty much talk about the games and how the fashion industry and the fashion brands, lots of fashion brands are collaborating with the gaming, the game companies and the gaming brands, like the Sims collaborated with Moschino's, and the Battlegrounds collaborated Covernet, and a couple of years ago with Villa, they are collaborated with the gaming brands as well. So fashion and like wearing fashion items in the virtual world is somewhat collaborated with your physical practical clothing that you wear in your world. Okay, so I cannot say which one is real and not real, but that boundaries and the lines between those two kind of words that we used to divide okay, has been blurred. Okay, and now we're thinking that the blurred kind of boundaries are like promoting consumers, like encouraging consumers to spend more. Okay, so lots of industries are involved and they're aggravating their consumers to like have certain kind of more and more needs, okay, to express themselves in some ways, or to express what they like, and communicate themselves as their social selves. Okay, so we are in the line of this week's topic, the social self, and the behavior, consumer behavior as in a group, is in a community. Okay, we are still talking about the social construction of identity in the social kind of cultural environment. Okay, so today we're going to talk about pretty much about your reading, and the subtitle of your reading is how cosplayers produce and sustain their ludic communal consumption experiences. That means they're having difficulties because it is difficult to sustain, difficult to produce, to continue to produce and sustain what they like due to many reasons they have counted, like industry involvement, pretty much. Okay, so we are gonna talk pretty much about consumer activism and the community, cultural communities and their sense of entrepreneurship to make certain kind of consumer culture in this field. All right. Okay, for today's class objective, we are going to study consumer behavior in broader spectrum, broader social cultural environments. So social cultural environment is influencing consumer behavior, but our environment is getting micronized. Okay, so we are talking about the micro culture groups that we are involved in, or we want to be involved in. Okay, so we're going to talk about the structure, the social culture structure of communication We had talked pretty much about the language last class. Okay, so that language that we have talked about was not about Korean language, English language, but that is the symbolic meanings that we could put meanings, and the listener could understand what you're saying as you think. Okay, so that is that cultural group that you can purely like communicate without further explanation. Okay, so depending on your value system and your psychographics and your the social self, and which is structured by your social lives, is talking pretty much about the culture, micronized culture, okay, that you're involved in. So subculture is a group of people within a like bigger, broader culture. Okay, so if you are not satisfied, or if you like to make certain changes on your parent culture, which is also called as the mainstream popular culture, if you're finding any like problems or any dissatisfactory kind of aspects of that parent culture, in that case, you're gonna be the one who wants to create certain different culture, which might be differentiated from the parent culture. Okay, so that is micronized culture that you want to belong and to maintain certain like founding principles. Okay, so we are the consumers who are continuously evolving and changing kind of culture system, like based on the changes of the times and the changes of the spirit of the times, okay, with the people. So we are gonna talk more about the subculture, how subculture is developing their own rules and their own norms, and how easy it is to be like promoted or aggravated by the mainstream culture. Okay, so the composition of the subculture and the collective behavior inside the subculture will be mainly discussed for today's class, right? Okay, what is costume play? Costume play literally means playing with your costume to make a performance, performing with your costume. That is the literal definition of costume play. Okay, but in case you're just purchasing a costume and ready-made kind of costume for your performance, that is not considered as the real kind of costume players by this group, because they are this is kind of unwritten kind of laws of the people, because they have to immerse themselves to the storylines of this character, and you are putting your ideas and your creativity to make those costume and present in your own way. So that was considered as the meanings of costume play. Okay, so this article is saying that the costume players are pretty much geek, and costume play culture is geek culture. That means this is very exceptional and interesting kind of people, because they are geek. That means they want to invest their time and their money for making what they like at home, like in very private space. So they are concentrating on making a certain kind of costume to explore, to study, and to learn, and to eventually make the craft, the costume, and then you're gonna go to the public to present yourself wearing the costume that you have made. So your private self and public self will be combined by doing this cosplay performance. Okay. So costume play is set up with two phases, okay? So the first phase is called the crafting the costume phase, okay? So you're gonna craft, you're gonna make your own costume. In this phase, the character immersion and the story engagement is so important. That means you should be a big fan of League of Legends or the big fan of the comic books. In that case, you could better understand the character. In that way, you can express the characters in this way, the every single point of the characters on their outfit, okay? So they are pretty professional. It requires professional skills like sewing machine. You use the sewing machine and quality material like quality real leather or the quality spandex is frequently used, because in case if they use the very cheap or cheesy kind of materials, that it doesn't look good to them for their standards, okay? So at home, they're investing their time, lots of time and lots of energy to make this creation. And nowadays, lots of like consumers are using 3D printers to make a very detailed kind of expression of the character on this material, right? Let's take a look at one example of the tutorial of the crafting for the costume play outfits, right?
If you're into gaming and haven't been living under a rock, you've probably heard of League of Legends' newest champion, Senna. She's a badass. So I was lucky enough to be asked by Riot to make her costume. So I'm here today to share that process with you. While Senna's lore does have a bit of a tragic backstory, her being able to eventually gain control of the darkness that kind of had her in prison makes her a really, really awesome character. So I'm super glad that I get the chance to cosplay her, especially since she's also League of Legends' first black female character. Obviously, I'm gonna do that. To pattern her top, I took my dress form, making sure it was the same measurements as me, and covered it in saran wrap and masking tape. Make sure when you do this step, you use the same bra that you plan to use when you wear the costume, and take care to wrap the masking tape as close as you can to the form, especially in the middle of the cleavage. If you can get it really close there, you're able to actually get a dip in there and avoid the typical uniboob look that you can sometimes get when you stretch spandex over boobs. So from here, I just freehanded the pattern, making sure it fit me in the right areas, and traced over the areas I wanted with Sharpie. After you draw it all out, you'll get something that looks like this. Number your pieces, draw connecting lines, and cut out your pattern. Don't cut darts into the breast piece, just try to flatten it as much as you can. The stretch from the spandex will make up for the slight lack in accuracy. And from here you can assemble your pattern.
If they're done making their costume, they're gonna go ahead to the public to make a performance, okay? So the second phase is called the performance in the costume at cons. They're calling it cons, like conventions, like certain kind of relevant events for them, and they are presenting themselves in the public. This first phase was considered as backstage performance, and the second step is front stage like activities. So they are playing the character in the performance and presenting the performance in public. So let's take a look at the example of the performance. All right.
The night beckons while you dream. Alive never lives in peace. As you stand upon the edge, woven by a single thread, and fear may fall down upon you, while the devil is knocking right at your door. Each night you hear the drums roar. Awaken, awaken, the voice begins to call you while you hunger. Taste the destiny you're searching for. Awaken, awaken, the fight is at your door. Take up the cause.
Okay, your article is taking very critical kind of lens, critical point of view to see the meanings of communal consumption. So communal consumption itself is you're playing as a consumer in a group, and that should be, if you're consuming as a group, could be a more interesting, okay? So they are setting the relationship between communal consumption and ludic, interesting experiences. So if they have a premise like this is like communal engagement, if you are consuming as a group, as a community, are highly enjoyable for consumers. Okay, so that is not kind of questionable kind of premise for the previous studies and previous research, and for the previous studies it was not kind of questionable kind of premise. Everybody will agree, yeah, if you are consuming as a group, it's more interesting. So if you are spending time with other people, it's more interesting. But this article is saying no. Okay, so they have set up their question, like study question that to observe and to study deeper about their experiences, like ludic experiences as costume players. But what they found through the consumer observation, okay, they have changed their study question. Okay, so the more important point they like to talk and discuss about was about their difficulty. It is difficult to consume all together as a group, especially it is aggregated by the industry or the capitals or the other big companies having lots of resources and information. In that case, their resources and their capital is gigantic. That is how they could like promote or direct or change the ways and control and manage the consumption culture in certain ways. That is how we can see on the case of the Burning Man. Okay, so Burning Man is an activity. A lot of people gathered, create something all together, and they on the final day they burn their creation out. Okay, to leave no like ecological footprint. So they are leaving as they have never been here before. So that was kind of philosophy and founding kind of thinkings of these consumer culture groups. But it has been like managed somehow. Competition was aggregated by the involvement and the industry and the new capitals, and in the field of costume play as itself. They have participated because that was inherently playful, that was enjoyable, that was why they have participated. But if they are entering those kind of consumption culture, the marketer will create a certain kind of consumption culture environment for them to work hard, to spend time, energy, money, to be involved, and those kind of interruptions were considered burdensome for the people. Some people who could not easily agree with their marketing strategy, like industry-driven marketing ideas, putting social ties on the meanings as the meanings of their activities that they're enjoying as an individual. All right. Okay, this article is talking about one example of how industry is developing a new market, new consumption market. Okay, so that is really sad, but due to the coronavirus spread, a lot of fashion weeks has been canceled, and that's why they are having digital or kind of fashion weeks, and lots of brands are having their digital fashion shows that has been presented on online, okay, virtual clothing, like digital catwalks. they're talking about. And they have said that people are having enough clothing already, and there are lots of people who are considering the environment and stop purchasing new unnecessary clothing. In that case, we have to find a new kind of niche market. They're saying that's new market for the people who are putting their money and time and on their social network and doing playing games or doing the social network, posting pictures and living and lots of investing much of their time online, like in a virtual world. For those people, they're selling virtual clothes to to present yourself on social media, so you can take a picture even though you don't have a physical material clothing, but you could buy that image to wear that clothes on your virtual self, okay, the virtual the avatar of yours or the image of yours, so they can create and develop the technology to show you how you're gonna make the outfit of yours that has could be taken as a picture and posted on your Instagram. So they're selling that, they're telling that, they're saying that there's enough clothing in the world. This way brands can produce fewer physical items but still sell, okay? So they are making a certain new kind of consumption culture. They are involved in creating a certain culture, targeting the gamers and targeting the people, for the people who are spending many times in their virtual world. So how this works, okay? So let's take a look at the video, but very short, like the seconds of the video, which is showing the virtual 3D fashion show, all right? For the costume play as well, a lot of different industries are involved, okay? Especially, for example, for this year's League of Legends cosplay events, Naver is involved, and they are providing the venue and the events and all the service scenes and service scape and for the convention, and they are providing all the services to bring their consumers and their future consumers in this venue, all right? So if you're taking the marketer's point of view, it is easier to understand. They have lots of people gathering in certain places, okay, and you can have a chance to contact them, and typically they're thinking that like they are orchestrating, they are making the scene by themselves by providing very enjoyable kind of experiences to their consumers, and they are thinking that is typical kind of responsibility of the marketers, okay? So if you are taking the marketer's point of view, it is easier to understand, to give them better goods and services and to satisfy them and to make sales, okay? So that was what market is doing. But the problem, what is considered problematic by the cosplayers is the competition, because it has become more and more competition oriented, okay? So the neighbor is bringing out with the idea of competition, and lots of the marketers who are involved in this event are presenting certain kind of rules. That means they are changing the directions of these microcultural, subcultural groups, and these groups had been evolved, and they are firstly, they have developed and they have evolved by taking their own rules. It was the typical rules of the microculture, the consumer culture. Consumers are becoming the activator to set a rule to keep this society, to keep this community as enjoyable as possible. But these competition-oriented events are increasing. That means lots of people are putting more time and putting more energy on their performance and the crafting as well. So that is considered problematic, and the tedious waiting and the tired applicants, you can see the picture here, they look so tired and they have to wait for the day and they can possibly enjoy the day. They were here to enjoy the day, but it is not possible when the competition is oriented. They have to wait and to make a performance, and they cannot fully enjoy their cosplay. And there are lots of the shops which is selling the crafting items, and the quality of the items, the crafting materials is getting more and more expensive and more like diversified. That is good sometimes, but it is getting much more expensive. That is too much burden for the cosplayers. And because it is competition oriented kind of events, they try to use the much more like expensive, good looking kind of material. Okay, and the professional skills are also required, so that is kind of mandatory kind of requirements of your skills to make your own clothes. So that was considered as one more kind of burden for them. They are feeling lots of difficulties by because they are doing the same thing. They're having their hobbies. It became their ritual to making and performing in certain ways. But lots of events are like changing their rules they used to share within the community, and they're directing and managing the rules of this community. So that was considered problematic. Okay, so the cosplay, the costume play became more and more like competition oriented, and in case the industries is involved, you are getting so much social fame in case you win the competition, all right? So in that case, people are getting more aggressive to put more time and energy on their cosplay, okay? And in that case, they're running out of their time, energy, and efforts, and in that case, they're getting so much stress and they're having difficulties to continue to sustain their hobbies, because they have started this as their hobbies, and now they are just putting too much efforts on that. So they are saying that one example case is saying that I have a normal 40-hour per week job, full-time job, but actually I cosplay because it is my favorite hobby, but I hesitate to turn my hobbies into my second job. Okay, so they're putting far much time on their hobbies. So it was their hobbies, and now it is not their hobby anymore. It became their second job. Okay, so they like to keep and separate the time for their family and time for the work and time for their hobbies. So they like to modularize their time and their efforts in some ways. Okay, so I'm gonna do this for today, and they're gonna plan what they're gonna do. So before the competition, they have a maximum of 3 months to 6 months to complete your crafting work. So in that case, you can have a clear plan for today I'm gonna do that. And I'm gonna do this while I'm watching TV. Okay, so some kind of handiworks that could be done by doing something else. Okay, so they are managing, consumers are managing their times for their own sake, like that. And another way that costume players are getting out of their stress and overcome the difficulties while making the crafted outfits is collaboration. So they are making networks to physically meet during weekends and work together. Okay, so they can manage their time and they can speed up their process, their working activities by having the people who are specialized in the leather goods. I'm very specialized in leather goods, making boots and the belts and the and other pieces of the leather goods. And I'm very specialized at sewing and running the sewing machine and making the putting the pieces of the fabric like spandex fabrics. I'm very specialized in that. Or I have 3D printer and I'm very specialized in making the decorations of the pieces, and I'm specialized in that I'm very good at lacing and making laces, and that is the taking they are taking their parts to make this collaborative work. Okay, so as a community, they are building their the community to get out of their stress. And this article is taking at the end, taking the marketer's point of view to see how the market and the industry could possibly help in a positive way to satisfy these specific groups. So they are thinking of the entrepreneurial kind of market, which could produce the crafting and the artwork of the craft for the costume play, not just for the costume play, but during the weekends they can gather and they can produce some works, some artworks they like and costumes, and in that case they could produce a market. Okay, so that is what the market could provide them certain kind of maker space, like spaces for them to bring all together and to work together, and like very pleasant and environment for the makers, like these groups. So that is kind of like healthy kind of involvement of the market to the consumption culture. Okay, so this is what consumers really want, really need from the market. The market is just presenting like fantastic kind of venue to make their performance even look nicer and great. But what actually the costume players are requiring from the market is those kind of investment, and not the sponsorship for the promotion, but the practical kind of investment. They can that is the backstage kind of investment. So consumers, so this consumption culture could be continued and to be sustained overall. Okay. Okay, nowadays and more cosplayers are putting emphasis on the novelty of the costume. So how new it is, how trendy it is becomes so important. That is why the lifespan of your costume is getting shorter and shorter. That is why they have to constantly produce and make their own costume over and over again. That is causing so much stress because they are always running out of their time, money, and energy. Right? So they are thinking of the second-hand market, but they don't want to sell what they have created to anybody. Okay, so they'd like to find the new owner of their creation. Okay, so they'd like to build a very like authentic or like mindful kind of like people who really like cosplay and who are not skilled, but who really like that character, so they like to keep it for a long time. So they want to build a market which is like encouraged by the community. Okay, so they like to build a market. And this article is also talking about what the industry could do to possibly like make them satisfied and to make them better, make them satisfied with better services they could possibly provide. So they have mentioned about the eBay's case example of cosplay selling guide. So in the case, selling guide and the buying guide and those kind of new kind of social community could be developed to sustain these maker groups in these costume player groups to sustain their activities for a long time. Okay. So for today, we have talked about a specific consumer group, costume players, and we have discussed how the industry or the market could be involved in positive way and to make them satisfied in certain ways, to look for, to observe what they need actually. So to meet their needs, it is very important to observe them, and to extensive interviews and to study about them is considered very important. So for this study, for this article, they have started their study by looking at the creativity, how creative they are making their costume and doing their performance. That was their study question. But they have changed it. They have shifted their angle by looking at their stresses and the difficulties overall by observing what they are doing on the performance side and the crafting community, and what they are having, or what kind of problems and the situation that they're experiencing. So they have found out they are having a different kind of the very important kind of issues to discuss. So they have changed their study question to see their difficulties and how the industry could involve. Okay, so to make them satisfied. All right, so for your project as well, you're going to observe your consumer and you're going to find their needs and their hidden needs that could be observed by you, or throughout conducting your interviews, you're going to find what they need, and you're going to do some research, like extensive research to satisfy them. Okay, so you're going to come up with your kind of findings. So that is the purpose of your project, and observation part is the most important part, I think. So that could lead you to find some study questions. Okay, so I'd like to please extend the submission due date of the consumer observation project, your second essay. So from April 22nd, that was the due date that has been planned, that has been listed on the syllabus, but you can have 9 more days to complete your second report. So please upload your essay by April 30. So I'd like to extend the due date for your second assignment. Okay, so it'll please have a plenty of time to make a good observation. All right, and as soon as you're ready and as soon as you're done, please upload your essay, submit your essay on the YSEC, so I could have plenty of time to think about your project and think about your case. Okay, so right, I'll be waiting for that. And on the second week, on the following week, next week, on the week 6th, we're gonna talk about the consumer interview, how you're gonna do your consumer interview, how to make the interview questions, and how to do the interview based studies. So I'm gonna show you some examples and the techniques to do consumer interviews. All right, okay, so all right. Okay, I'll see you next week. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.